Welcome to the Growth with AI podcast, hosted by Integrated AI Services. I'm Peter Martinson, and today's episode dives into how AI is reshaping storytelling, content strategy, and brand communication in the world of venture capital. Our guest is Riley Kaminer, founder of Clear Critical, a content studio helping investors and startups turn complex ideas into clear, compelling narratives that drive engagement and credibility. We'll explore how AI is transforming the way that thought leadership is created and distributed, how data-driven content is redefining investor communications, and how Clear Critical is using intelligent tools to bridge creativity and precision in modern storytelling. Riley, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me your story. How did you get started doing what you're doing now?
Definitely. So I have always done journalism ever since I was 14. And my focus in the world of journalism was pretty much always on business, finance, tech, those sorts of topics. And so after college and grad school, I really doubled down on journalism and was doing a lot, particularly about startups, and kind of came to the realization that actually there were so many amazing stories to be told, but not enough places to tell them. And so what I did was create Clear Critical to empower those who are the protagonists of those stories to tell them themselves and on their own terms. And so I started as a freelance ghostwriter, working a lot with investors, entrepreneurs to help them with LinkedIn content and blog posts and things of that nature. And over the last 5 years, we've built it up to a small business and are growing quite a bit.
Well, you're definitely a writer because nobody else would use the word protagonist in a podcast.
I try. Those SAT words, you gotta make some use out of them.
So I'm curious, how did you get to Miami from the UK?
Well, I grew up in New York. I lived there till I was
Okay.
18 in the suburbs of New York City. And kind of when I was 18, I decided to go somewhere far for college. And I was thinking either of going to the UK or to California, the two kind of furthest places that I could conceive of as an 18-year-old in New York. And I just kind of got into some universities that I liked in the UK and went for it. And then I was there for about 6 years. Decided to come back to the US. And in that time, my family had moved to Miami. And so I went back to Miami thinking it's winter, it's, kind of a nice time to be there, but I'll go to somewhere else, New York, DC, LA, San Francisco, I don't know, somewhere more exciting. And then COVID happened and lots of people moved to Miami and it really grew a lot and friends moved there and I just kind of stayed.
Okay. Yeah, it's amazing how much I hear that a lot, just how much COVID transformed people's lives and businesses. So very cool. Okay. So to talk a little bit about your actual work. So, Clear Critical really seems to have a niche with helping venture capitalists. So how do you turn like investment theses into compelling narratives? Like how do you do that and how do you use AI tools to speed that along or to improve that process?
So for the world of venture capital, what I think is most exciting from my perspective is the people who run these firms are often really visionaries in their respective fields. And so from a content perspective, it's such a rich pool of information, of perspectives to share, and just too rarely are they actually shared. So what we do is we interview the founders of the VCs and talk through kind of what's on their mind, what trends they're seeing, sometimes deep dives into various industries that they're involved in, and then kind of transmit that into content. Of course, the ultimate goal for them is usually either raising funds for their VC or improving their deal flow. So there are obvious kind of commercial goals that they have. But I would say from my journalism perspective, it's really valuable to me to share these ideas and share them at scale and enable these founders to do that. And then in terms of the AI, I mean, I think I'm in the extreme minority of journalists and media people that actually is optimistic about AI. I'm someone who has never worked in a traditional newsroom. I mean, I did one internship when I was a kid, but beyond that, I've never really worked in a traditional newsroom and I've always been kind of a freelancer. And so for me, it's actually incredibly helpful to use AI tools, for example, to do research
Hmm.
or to kind of speak. Imagine if I was in an office with my editor and I could have a conversation. Oh, I'm interviewing Peter later. What should I ask him? And you have that conversation with your editor sitting next to you. Well, if you don't have that editor, what do you do? And I think AI is very helpful with that. From my perspective, in terms of the writing itself, I still don't think AI is quite there to what I like for my kind of level of writing. I think it helps a lot of people that aren't professional writers get something that's kind of reasonable. But I think for people in my field, there's still some development to be had in the AI. And then just beyond the very kind of specific work that we're doing using AI, there are all sorts of tools that help us and help me run a business, whether it's scheduling, whether it's bookkeeping, so much administrative type stuff that would have been very difficult, expensive, prohibitive for a lot of small business owners is now available thanks to AI. So we're very, very excited about all those tools.
Nice. So, like, what specific workflows or systems or tools have you actually put into place inside Clear Critical? Can you talk about any of the specifics?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, core to what we do is Notion, and Notion has
Hmm.
been integrating a lot of AI features lately. So it's kind of like the hub for everything we do, especially kind of between the writers and editors and then the clients themselves, and kind of making sure we never drop the ball on any deliverables, keeping things really organized. On my kind of on a personal level as a business owner, I found it very useful, some of the kind of automations that they have. So I have different
Hmm.
kind of goals that I set with my business, and in Notion, it automatically reminds me to kind of think about those goals, track those goals, that sort of thing. And also, I mean, we've been using increasingly recently a lot of integrations. So, like for example, Stripe integrating with Zapier, or using Zapier kind of Zaps, for example, to send email confirmations when someone sends a Stripe payment. That's a perfect example of AI saving the day because I tried to do that maybe 2 years ago with Zapier, and I really was overwhelmed because I'm not a technical person. And I
Hmm.
actually hired someone and had someone help me set up a lot of stuff in Zapier at that point, also for Notion. And then just, I don't know, a month or two ago, I tried to get, Zapier again recently, and they have a whole kind of chat interface where you basically describe in plain English what you're trying to do, and it like he does it for you. I mean, it really, even if you're not needing to build anything in Zapier, I would urge you to just check this feature out just because it feels like the future. It's quite cool. So yeah, just kind of trying to think of low effort ways to integrate AI powered tools just to make everyone's life easier.
Yeah, that's the name of the game is automate and reduce the annoying routine things. But then, when you can use it to really help with client communication, like, sending confirmation emails instead of having to do that manually, that's a great way to use it. Yeah. So when you're working with VC firms and limited partner audiences, credibility really matters, I think, because they're dealing with a lot of money and investments. And so, how do you balance using AI to help with content, but maintain that high quality strategic voice um, that's inherent to you and your firm? Do you do that by just not using AI for content?
I am so open to using AI for content in theory. My issue is in practice, all the tools that we use are none of them have kind of been up to scratch. It's funny. I mean, if you ask one of my team members who's kind of leading this charge, I mean, maybe every other day I send her a new platform to investigate. And they're getting better, and I think a lot of times they help as a base, but there's still a long way to go. I would say the more tangible ways we're using AI right now are things like transcriptions or summarizing calls, coming
Hmm.
up with topics, helping us with the content strategy. Because, writing is just kind of one part of what we do, but the part before it, the strategy is really important. And the part after it, the distribution, is also really important. So AI can help a lot with both of those things. I think one interesting aspect that we're working through right now is we really I like to be very open and honest with my clients, and I as part of that I thought initially when I started using these AI tools that I would be very clear, like, hey, we're using AI for this, that, and the other. And I did that originally, and people were very receptive. These are guys who are really early adopters in many cases, so they're very keen in that sense. But then what was funny was some of them, the mentality shifted, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and it's like, I don't really care what you do. I don't want to see how the sausage is made. I just care about the final product. And I think that's so telling about how we're all getting very used to these platforms. And I think it's just an interesting and kind of exciting evolution in AI these days.
Yeah. So, can you describe a little bit about what the strategy part is uh, before the content creation?
Yeah, definitely. So we do a whole content strategy document and an exercise around that before we get started, because basically what we see is so many people do kind of, a couple random LinkedIn posts here and there. But what's really important is that you understand what your goals are with content, who are your
Hmm.
audiences that you're trying to attract, what are those needs that the audience has, and how can your content address those needs. So really thinking through all of that from the start, and then also coming up with tons of topics. I like to call them content buckets, so just like
Hmm.
general themes to talk about, so you never sit and think, oh, well, what are we going to talk about this month, what are we going to write about this month. That never happens, because we already have thought through the ideas and have a bit of a plan. Really, the first part, and then the last part, the last step of the process is distribution, which I think is an increasingly important topic these days. Which is, I mean, in plain English, how people are going to see what you do. How they see your content. And so for us, LinkedIn is number one. I mean, it's just the place where most of our clients are, and where they want to be, and where their potential customers are. So for us, the focus on LinkedIn is huge, but then there's so many other platforms and kind of other places to be, whether it's op-eds in traditional publications, whether it's Substack, whether it's blog, the opportunities are endless. And so it's just a matter of figuring out what makes most sense for each client based on the goals that they have.
Gotcha. Very cool. Okay. Um, so, looking ahead, what role do you think that AI will play, in a year for you, and how are you thinking about that and preparing for it to do even more?
I mean, as a small business owner, I'm very excited because it basically allows me to be more focused on what matters most and worry less about things that matter less. So, for example, for me, it's important to have my fingers on the last versions of all the content before it gets sent out. And because AI saves me time when it comes to administrative stuff related to my business, I'm able to be more involved in the stuff that matters. So I think that trend will continue. I think, from a staffing perspective, now I don't see why any agency would need to be more than 5 people, maybe 10 people if it's a complicated business. I mean, these tools really allow us to do so much more with so much less. And any agency that isn't using them to the full extent is going to lose lots of business and kind of miss out. I think that's a huge trend we're going to see. I think also in terms of content itself, there's a lot of slop out there. If you look on LinkedIn, I mean, a lot of people sound very similar, and I think we as humans are very attuned to AI stuff that sounds too AI generated. And so what I'm expecting, and I've already seen to some extent, is a premium placed on content that feels really genuine and feels really
Hmm.
human and really high quality. And I think especially in the VC kind of private equity world, that will be huge, because they're dealing with, the most discerning, the highest end customers on planet Earth, and their content needs to reflect that.
Gotcha. So talking about staffing, are you finding that you're looking for people who are more technically inclined now, or are you doubling down on the creative part because the tech has gotten so easy and you don't have to worry about needing like people who can do complicated tech things?
You know, uh, Gary Vee has a great quote that's like, clouds and dirt. That's what he focuses on. And I think that's really relevant in regards to your question, where I think we're very focused on people who have very serious skills in both areas and nothing in between. So for example, creative people who are just totally creative and machines that are trying to whip out content as fast as possible, but true almost artists in a way. I mean, that's why I work with journalists in terms of the content that we create. It's quite a differentiator for us. And then on the flip side, I have two administrative staff members who are very focused on AI and kind of automation and bringing that into our business. And so to answer your question, I think yes to both. I think, we as an agency don't need truly technical talent because we're not building any tech or what we're doing is not that complicated from an AI or from a tech perspective, but definitely like from an administrative perspective, it's really important that those folks understand and are willing to use AI technologies to make everything happen faster.
Gotcha. Okay. So, do you have any fun stories that you can talk about, for a client, not naming names or whatever, that just is something entertaining?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one thing that I see with all of my clients is an interest in being featured in major publications. So, for example, I've done a lot with Forbes in the past, and I have had a lot of clients that start working with me and they're like, I need an article in Forbes. That's the peak, the pinnacle of business and journalism. And it's like once they start to see that actually publishing on LinkedIn gives you better results actually
Mhm.
in most metrics, whether it's views, engagements, business opportunities. I mean, you name it. I think they get really excited. And that's a story that I've seen across many different clients. And I think one of the most fun aspects of what I've been able to do is see very traditional people evolve from, being skeptical of even sending an email newsletter to then, I mean, I had a 75-year-old guy who runs an angel syndicate
Mhm.
ask me, should I get on TikTok? Like, what do I do to get on TikTok? You know what I mean? And it's like, I love that. And the answer for him happened to be a very gentle, no, you don't need to stick to LinkedIn for now. That's plenty. But I love the idea that people are really thinking more creatively, and when AI enables you to do more with less resources, I think it will open up a whole new world for content. That really excites me.
Nice. So I'm curious, are you able to effectively publish the same thing in two places, like an article in Forbes and on LinkedIn, or do you have to make big changes to it to publish it in two places?
Depends the context. I mean, if there's an article in Forbes, what we can do is write a little summary on LinkedIn and then link to Forbes, like
Mhm.
do a hyperlink. That's what we usually do. It's a bit more complicated when you're doing an op-ed. So, for example, if you're doing an op-ed for Entrepreneur Magazine, it's a really popular one, or Inc., another one. They ask for the content to be exclusive to them.
Okay.
Of course, the way around that is like it's your ideas as a VC person. If you can kind of repackage your ideas in a different format, that's fine. Obviously, you still own your ideas, right? But yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag there.
All right. Cool. Well, we'll start to wrap things up, but just before we go, what do you want people who might hire you to know about you and your firm?
Well, I think, just anyone that's interested in this world should know that content really matters. I mean, this podcast is a great example, but just in general, it's really important to share what you know, what you do, and if you don't, it's not a nice to have anymore. It's something that's really kind of compulsory, I would say. And just in terms of working with us, I think that the big difference is our perspective. We're all former journalists, and so we really take that seriously of kind of cutting through the BS. If you deal with normal marketing people or PR people, there's a lot of fluff, a lot of acronyms, a lot of buzzwords, but really what we've seen is the end users, that the kind of customers see right through that. And so if you're
Mm.
looking for a content agency that really knows how to speak the language of your investors, then give us a shout.
Sounds great. All right. Well, thanks for that. And Riley, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And I'm sure that our guests will learn something new. So,
Likewise. Thank you.
all right. Well, we'll see you on the internet somewhere. Take care.
Thank you.